Every Christmas, I find myself craving the flavors I grew up with in Germany, the warm spices, the buttery dough, and the simple joy of holiday baking. These traditional German Christmas cookies aren't just recipes, they are memories. And if you've ever wanted to bake authentic German Christmas cookies and treats, the kind that make your home smell like the holidays, you're in the right place. I always like to start with checking my antique cookbooks. The dark one is from 1906 and it's very delicate, so I got to be really careful. And it's in the old German font that I understand not many people can still read, but all the holiday cookies that I was going to bake are in there. And the first one is Spekulatius, which is a German spice cookie. Of course, I need my apron because I want to save my clothes, and that is what my grandmother did. It's a ritual. It also signals the beginning of something and the importance of something, and just makes it a little bit more of a tradition. Having all my tools and my equipment here is really essential to me. Sometimes I feel like I have a little bit too much, like all these hand mixers and my stand mixer and this and that and the other. But I do find that with all my baking and cooking in my kitchen, I actually enjoy having what I need to create recipes. Now, my grandmother, when she was a child, and with my great-grandmother, I'm sure she only had half of that. They used a lot of elbow grease, they weren't as efficient, or maybe they had to enlist other family members to get their baking and whipping cream and churning butter and all of that done. So I am really grateful that these days I don't have to go through all of that and I can just whip out a few different cookies in one afternoon. However, I am here with my recipes that are a little bit updated. I don't typically use the recipes that I find in my antique cookbooks because they tend to be pretty large batches to begin with, and then they have a lot of butter and a lot of eggs. And so in all honesty and transparency, I have kind of updated the recipes that I find in my antique cookbooks. This holiday baking session is a ritual in my home. I always love it, and I put on what my family calls cheesy Christmas music. I have a few CDs and tracks that go back to my childhood, and I know them by heart. I can whistle with them, and it just makes me really happy. Music is so good for our brain, and it just brings in the holiday cheer and just so much joy. I mean, sometimes the hustle and the bustle of the holiday season gets us more stressed than anything else, and everybody talks about, the peace and the joy of the holiday season. But in reality, we're all running around trying to get things done. So while I'm listening to this music, I find myself really dropping into this kind of holiday cheer. And I also like to take my time. I set aside a whole afternoon for this. And sometimes or not, there may be a glass of sparkling something there, some bubbles, to commemorate the occasion and to just make it even more joyful and cheerful. I have one cookie dough in the refrigerator chilling, and while that's going on, I am making another cookie dough. I typically try to make a few different cookies at every session. I have another video from last year in which I showed you the ones I always make, but this year I tried to make something a little bit different. The Spekulatius, which is the German spice cookie, I have the recipe link in the description box below for you. It's something I hadn't really tackled before, and that was a little bit different. Typically, they're the ones that when you live in Germany, if you live in Germany, you just buy from the store and you would never think twice about baking them at home. But being here in the United States, where these things are either not really easy to find or they're pretty expensive, I thought, you know what? My grandmother used to bake these. I find them in all my different Christmas baking recipe books and whatnot, so why not try them? The result is absolutely worth it, and it is actually really fun, which I'm going to show you just in a moment. This dough here is for what we call Spritz Kuchen, and it's a dough that's really soft, and you put it through I think it's called a piping bag, I think something like that. And it creates all these really fun shapes, and then you dip it in chocolate, but I'm going to show you that when I'm done. So this one is, I actually made that a little bit easier of a version. Usually you just cream together butter and sugar, and then you add all the other ingredients. I did that the other way around. And here is I think it's called piping bag, right? And it takes a little bit of elbow grease and a little bit of practice and just being gracious with yourself to get the shapes right. I mean, they're always fun. They always look great. They always look cute, and you can see the ridges in there, but to get them perfectly even, that takes a little bit of practice. I also made these Spekulatius with my cookie roller, and that is something that I got in Germany. It must have been 30 years ago, which is super fun. It creates all these shapes that are a little bit delicate, but I also have these rolling guides, and one of the secrets to creating even cookies that bake evenly is rolling them out evenly. And even though all these years I have tried to do that, with these rolling guides, you can get your perfect 3 millimeters, which is, I think, a really good universal thickness for cookie dough, and then they bake evenly and come out very even. So here are these fun shapes, and I'm just going to go ahead and brush them with some milk. In the end, I know that a lot of recipes recommend that. I am a little bit torn between doing that and not doing that, because I felt that it kind of takes away from the cute pattern and the deep ridges. It just kind of makes it a little bit disappear, maybe, if that's the word. However, I did one batch with brushing them and one batch without brushing them with milk. What I love about this is slowing down and being in the moment and being kind of in a meditative state, because there's no rushing. Actually, I don't like the rushing. I just like to do this. And this brings me back to the cookie baking sessions that we had when I was a kid. My mom would get us in the kitchen, and in Germany, I mean, I live in California, so actually the sun sets not very early, but in Germany it does. And I remember these afternoons that were already a little bit dark, and we would be in the kitchen and she would have the cookie dough. And of course, these are my memories, but I bet that with the constant rolling them out in flour, they probably got drier with every batch we made. And I think that there were a lot of cookies that landed right in our tummies. But isn't that the fun of cooking and baking and putting them on a cookie plate and having something tangible that you produced and that makes your house smell amazing? These are the fun shapes of the Spekulatius, the warm spiced cookies. The Spritzkuchen go into this chocolate here, and I always like to melt my own chocolate. I just get really good chocolate from the grocery store, and I do believe that a lot of these recipes really depend on using good ingredients, but again, there's nothing just like handmade. These are cookies that you can find in a lot of cookie tins, and it never occurred to me to make them at home, but I have to say that with a little practice and getting the shapes right, whether you're doing circles or little S shapes or something else, it's just really so fun and absolutely worth it. And of course, you do need a few little ingredients to make that happen. My cookie tins are going to be filled, and I have different types of cookies for my cookie plates, and they're probably going to last us through the holiday season. At least that is my hope. I often have to make sure that family members don't go in there and help themselves to a whole bunch in one sitting. I kind of like to spread them out and then have a little bit left for even Christmas Eve, which is what we celebrate. My last treat here is something that I also have very fond memories, and that is German baked apples. We call that Bratäpfel. And there is, if you have lived in Germany, or especially if you've grown up in Germany, you might know this verse. Kinder, kommt und ratet, was im Ofen bratet. And then it continues, and it's really fun for kids to say, der Zipfel, der Zapfel, der goldrote Apfel. And it's just a really fun verse to go with something that's kind of ordinary, but it's also really basic and really simple, but oh so good. I am coring these apples, and then I have my filling: butter, raisins, cinnamon, and almonds. There's so many different variations, and you can add whatever spices or ingredients you want, but I find that this is really basic and also really good. And all you need to do is put the warm apples, hot apples actually, and serve them with a warm homemade vanilla sauce. I'm also going to link the recipe below, and enjoy them. And that is something that, just like when I close my eyes, I feel like I'm transported right back into my childhood, these afternoons when it was dark outside, it was cold, and we would have these warm treats in the afternoon that just rang in the holiday season. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.